always an honour to speak in this chamber, but particularly in moments like this when we have the opportunity to say just a few words in my contribution today will be brief about the remarkable apology that the Parliament gave in the last sitting week to those Victorians who experienced historical abuse and neglect as children in institutional care. And obviously there's been many moving words said today on the subject, but I think in particular the contribution that the Premier made on the floor of the joint sitting last sitting week. I didn't maintain a dry eye through her contribution, and I'm sure many others didn't either, and also obviously to acknowledge the contributions that the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of the Greens similarly made on that day. There has been, and I think it's important when we look at the apology, is to reflect and remember on the role that many who've advocated for acknowledgement of those children who were abused in institutional care have made over decades. Their advocacy on behalf of the fellow children that they grew up in institutions with has been relentless, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. They have been persistent and dogged in their advocacy. And it is important, I think, to acknowledge the seminal role that a couple of parliamentary committees played in the course of the last 20 years in giving acknowledgement to that voice and amplifying their experiences to the state and to the nation. And I think that perhaps in those instances we see the most noblest expression of our role, both as parliamentarians but as those who participate in parliamentary committee work, where we can give voice to the voiceless and we can lay bare for everyone to see, under the protections of the privileges of this institution with its storied history, to uncover the terrible history that has existed in places and parts of our state that has been free of scrutiny and oversight and care and love for so long. And that's what, particularly as Ms Crozier mentioned in her contribution, the Betrayal of Trust report, initiated in 2011, tabled in 2013, what that committee process demonstrated and uncovered, but also stretching back now 20 years to 2004, where what was arguably the seminal parliamentary committee report of the Senate Community Affairs Committee into children in institutional care that was tabled in 2004, that really for the first time told the story of what happened to children in Australia who were placed in institutional care and those child migrants who were forced to come to these shores. Those documents, that process, set us on the path that led us to the apology that was so graciously received by so many who listened to it either in the galleries or at home in the last sitting week. And the extent to which their capacity for humanity shone through in how they responded to the graciousness that was tried to be expressed to them by the leaders in the debate, but with the absolute graciousness with which that was received by them. And I think, to echo those words that the Premier spoke, that the shame of this episode is not with them but with us. Too many Australians, too many Victorians suffered abuse when they were placed in institutional care during the last century, and the extent of that psychological, physical, emotional and sexual abuse is devastating. Too many children suffered. Many of these children grew up not knowing their family, and the grief and trauma that they experience continues through to this day, and the knock-on consequences of how they were mistreated has followed them into adulthood, whether that manifests with higher instances of poverty or homelessness or substance abuse. Some have suffered in those ways because everyone in those circumstances suffered from the institutions that they were placed in the care of. Part of the healing is the acknowledgement, and that's why these motions of apology are so important. They acknowledge and they allow the healing to take place at an individual level. They must also allow the resolve of current legislators and policymakers to ensure that when the state does need to take necessary action to step in and do what is required to keep children safe today, and we still regrettably do need to take such action, that we do so with models of care that are informed by the best interests of those children, about their recovery and restoration, and not with the kinds of attitudes that scarred the murky past. We've got to learn from what happened. We've got to resolve to not let it happen again. As we are doing, we've got to show both contrition and that there is redress available, because that is an important part of the healing journey. It's both the acknowledgement that comes with an apology, but the action that comes with things like redress schemes, which the government has initiated, and with the programs that go in to support both the children who are currently in out-of-home care or those as adults who are still suffering from this trauma. We are committed, the government is wholeheartedly committed to both acknowledging historical abuse and neglect that too many Victorian children suffered. The apology does that for us. And to recommit ourselves collectively to ensuring that the children who exist in our care now are looked after in the best way we possibly can, because we must always commit ourselves to doing more and to doing better to protect Victoria's children, whether that be the past or the present or the future. Thank you.